We got 5 participants.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Weaver, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Maryland Council on Economic Education. With me, I have Dr. Alan Cox, who many of you know from other seminars, workshops, and summits we've had in the past. I'm pleased today to welcome 2 really terrific educators to join us to talk a little bit about some best practices for teaching the stock market game virtually. I have Mr. Thomas Dennison, who is a 5th grade teacher in Harford County, who is going to blow you away with some of the innovations he used this spring in his classroom. And Miss Carolyn Quest, who's with the SIFA Foundation, that, as many of you know, is the organization behind the stock market game experience, and she's going to share some resources with you as well. After they speak for a little bit, Dr. Cox is going to moderate some questions, housekeeping issues. We're going to save all the questions till the end. At the bottom of your screen, you should have a Q&A box. If you'd like to enter questions there, we will use that as a forum for responding to your questions after they've had a chance to complete their brief presentations. Thank you all for being here. Thomas, would you like to go?
Yeah, that'd be great. Good morning. My name is Thomas Dennis, and I teach 5th grade. I've been teaching for 17 years, all at the same school. I was a 2016 Milken Award winner and 2018 fellow winner there. But this is the first year that I've had a chance to teach the stock market game. We were trained last year, and at the end of the year, didn't get a chance to do it. And what is unique about this setup is that we hadn't taught it at all when we went away for our quarantine break. So this was the content for social studies that I taught for 12 weeks, all virtually. So we started it virtually and we went all the way to the end virtually. Kids hadn't seen one breath of it. So you're gonna see me change a lot of the things as we kind of went through, and that's kind of what I wanna share with you is kind of the path that we went through, some things that worked and some things that didn't. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. If you have questions as we're going, throw them in the chat. And all of the Padlets and the things that you see will be available for you to dig through and pick through and laugh at later. So let me go ahead and share here. All right, so there's 3 real areas I wanna make sure that I cover here, and what I'm expecting to be about 25 minutes. One area, starting from the top, is something I call everybody always. And these are things that I feel like everybody can do that will help everyone involved, regardless of age level of student or academic level of student or comfort of teacher. I feel like these are things we can all do specific to the stock market game. I also want to go ahead and talk about distance tools, because I don't know about y'all, but when this stuff started to happen, the number of emails I was getting about what tools to use and what's free now and what I could access, I want to kind of narrow that down for you and really show you the platforms that I use, because there's this larger issue, this larger topic, the cute one with me and the bee, that I feel like covers everything. And that's that we as teachers right now need to do more with less. Fewer platforms, fewer resources, and fewer things on a page to students and activities, honestly, than we would normally do. So we're gonna go over that one last, because I think that what we talk about in the other 2 areas will kind of cover everything else. So why don't we start with distance tools, because you're gonna see my work as we're going. So let me unpack for you what it is I created and what I use to create it. So there's 2 real areas here with distance tools. One is what I use to actually create things, and then the other would be what I use to actually share work with students and get work back from students. On the creating side, QuickTime is absolutely incredible because it allows me to screen record. You are going to screen, or I screen recorded absolutely everything. I've screen recorded everything going on for 13 weeks, and QuickTime is the absolute easiest way for me to do that. Reflector 3 is the only one that I paid for. They have a trial that I kind of tested this out with, but Reflector 3 is incredibly cool because it gives you the option to do this. That is my phone being cast onto the screen, and it actually, kind of stressing myself out there, seeing myself point and yell at myself because I know what I'm saying. Calm down, buddy. So it actually will allow you to cast up to 9 different screens. So some other things I was doing with kids, I would have my phone up, I would have an iPad cast up so that I could write and work on that. And this honestly is just my camera app, just showing what's on my phone. This was incredible. This was kind of a pretty life-saving tool. So, come on back. And then the other thing is 4K video downloader. 4K video downloader allows you to download YouTube videos and YouTube music. You would be shocked at how much it improves a video to throw a little bit of background music underneath, because nobody likes to hear a person talking all the time. I don't know if y'all go to church, but at the end of the sermon, they always put a little music behind because they know people start kind of zoning out. The music brings you back a little bit. And if you go ahead and use royalty-free music, which you can find all over YouTube, I downloaded it with that. So that's how I created. In terms of getting things to kids, I already mentioned to you, we're really going to cut back a ton. I use Padlet, and I'm going to show you a bunch of Padlets. Padlet is one consistent resource or consistent platform that my kids saw. During the first couple of weeks, we noticed that math was the thing getting done the fastest by students, and that was because we were able to use the platform distance-wise that we were using at school. So kids were familiar with it. So that kind of taught us we need to use the same platform every single week. So I created a Padlet every single week so that kids consistently knew how to manage it. We can kind of get the tool out of the way. This list here was a lot longer the first couple weeks. There were things like answer gardens and Wordles and all sorts of stuff that I was working in. But I really went and narrowed it down to just a Nearpod using Yahoo Finance and News ELA or Newsla, however you want to pronounce that. But this is an absolutely incredible site because it takes articles and news that's going on in the world right now and then puts them into kid language. And then it allows you to pick your Lexile level. Pick from 600, 700, 800, all the way up to like 1200 Lexile. And then you download those articles in PDF to send those off and make them part of your Padlet. Now, Padlet is incredibly awesome because any sort of media or format that you have can go into a Padlet. And I came up with some things that I learned about creating a Padlet. Let me show you. This is one. Now, I was super excited for this week. This week was our purchase week, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about how I built up to the purchase week. I was so stoked for this purchase week. And when we finished the week, we would send out our Padlets on a Tuesday, and they would have 1 week to kind of complete all these activities. And you can see, I have a lot going on in this Padlet. And this one actually, I even edited a bunch because one of the cool things about Padlets is if I make a mistake, I can go in right at that moment and change it without altering the link to kids. So I actually was trying to do that. After this week was finished, we had only a third of our students complete this work. And I will tell you, I was completely distraught and frustrated at the amount of work I put in and the lack of work I was getting back from students. It was actually my wife who came over my shoulder and she's like, Thomas, you gotta be kidding me. There's nobody's doing all of that. You know, we have 4 kids here at home. And she's trying to help them and I'm trying to help them. She's like, that is just too overwhelming. So one of the things that we really looked at doing was cutting things back. So this is how I remade that exact same Padlet. That very next week, those kids who completed it, they did a different activity with me, but we resent out the exact same work. And there's a couple changes that I want you to notice within this Padlet. So you'll notice that there are numbered steps across the top. That is letting kids know exactly where they need to be going step by step. Every single column needs to have an action step. They also, as students post, we required here that they started to put their name as the subject. I created at the bottom of each column, there is now, come here, there it is. There's now a red column which tells them that they're done, and kids had to sign at the bottom of that column to ensure that they were completing that specific column. Each column had an action step. I learned to avoid cute titles. Like if you look at these, it's like step 1, learn the rules. Step 2, you do your research. You know, early on, I think I'm coming up with cute and clever things. And that was cute for me, not helpful to kids. So, and you'll notice this one is much shorter. These go far less. And any optional things, I ended up really just, and you'll see these in other Padlets, I throw them at the very end, but I stopped putting optional things in here. There's a ton of resources, and Carolyn's going to go over those in a little bit. And I was throwing in those extra resources as well with the resources that I was making, and it just was too much for kids. So let's get into these a little bit. I'm already 3 minutes over my pacing, so it is true. You do talk more when it's go time. So that is kind of the basics of the distance tools that I learned. Let's get into some very specific things for the stock market game that I think everybody can do. And I kind of define everybody always as it strategies we can all do that are going to help all students. So regardless of where you teach, how you teach, what levels you teach, I think these are strategies for the stock market game that benefit everyone. And I will point out again, this is my first time doing it, so I made a lot of mistakes. Let's just leave it there. So one, this changes as you go to distance learning, it changes to an individual game. One of the greater components about this in the classroom is it's a team game, and you're learning how to discuss and kind of have those conversations with each other. But online, it had to switch to an individual game in order to get it done successfully. Our county went to asynchronous learning, meaning we really struggled and to set up times for kids to meet. So the kids needed to be able to do things on their own at their own pace. So I ended up having 93 teams. Another basic change that I would suggest that you make, I made every single password the same for every single kid. Now this stayed confidential because they didn't know each other's usernames, but honestly, one of the biggest issues we saw is kids don't manage passwords well. I don't think kids are tech savvy. I think they're app savvy, and they just don't know how to manage these things. And we find our computers save our passwords a lot. Getting kids signed into things, I don't know about you, but it was brutal for us. So them all having the exact same password was a huge benefit. Another thing I think you should all do, everything, and you're seeing this throughout mine, your face and your voice should drip off of every single thing that you do. You'll see my Bitmojis. These are screenshots of some of them that I did. You'll see I've got videos of me absolutely everywhere in these. I played the games along with the kids. And I also think there is a part of your daily life here at home that kids really want to see. I have a couple pet geckos at home. And as we're introducing vocabulary, I created one of our intro ones was banking questions so simple even my gecko could understand. So I just did these super short videos with my gecko on my arm. And it's really—
Banking questions. I mean, so simple. My gecko can understand.
There she is. She's little.
What's the difference between a brand, a company, and a corporation?
So I just did these kind of little chunked out videos, honestly, just answering them, but having that special touch, and then the kids later were wanting to see the geckos and talk to the geckos. And, you know, just something about sharing your personal life during this time that I think is really important. So a basic is put you all over this. And a lot of the resources Carolyn's going to show you later, I used a lot of them, even though you're not going to see them, because I would see a video, which turns out that she made, and then I would remake it with me in it, because my kids need to see me. I had a phone call with one student, and he and his mother are yelling at each other. And it's very uncomfortable to hear a mom and a student yelling at each other. I'm trying to get them on Teams. And the moment he gets on Teams and sees my face, like, you just see this breath kind of calm in his body. Once he can see me and I can see him, I can speak truth into him, and I can kind of make contact with him. And there's a reality that we're in this together. I asked his mom to leave the room, and we got the work done in 15 minutes that he was throwing a huge fit about. Them seeing us is incredibly important. Another tip that I would recommend with you is that you make an account for yourself. Like, you got to play. You have to play. You have to compete with them. And there's a couple cool things that happen when you compete with them. One, when I competed with them, it actually ended up being a necessity, because I had that week where I redid things. There were a few kids who did the work the first week, and I couldn't have them do it again. So their simple assignment that week was, you coming at me, and I'm coming for you. And we're going to see who can make more money during this time frame. And I offer them 3 things if they beat me. 1, they would earn this certificate at the end of the year, announcing their dominance over me. 2, they would earn points for their house. But most importantly, 3, I would get on our school's Facebook page and I would admit to all of our followers and to the public world that they were better at the stock market game than me. And that was outstanding. That got so many views and it was so exciting. But we actually did have 6 kids beat me and legit beat me. Like I was really trying and they came at me. One of the other things, one of the benefits with doing that is I started that whole week I did it, I vlogged, and that I just did like a 2-minute talk about what I was doing or what I was thinking on that day. And then I would post those to our, to the school Facebook page. And then later I took all of them and I put them into this flip chart so that kids could kind of see kind of what I was thinking. And it allows me
how much the stock market can go up and down in just one day. Yesterday I had every single stock except for one of them in the red. Today I have.
It allowed me to talk through strategies, do a lot of modeling that you would normally not get to do. We came up on a weekend where there was no, where we had the markets would be closed on Monday. So the Friday purchases were extremely important. I got stuck one day thinking I was buying Tesla at a certain price. At an overnight price, but it turns out you don't get the overnight price, you get the morning price. There's a bunch of things I was learning as we went that allowed me kind of model thinking. There was one spot where I had a $245 balance in my account. And so I was able to talk through with kids how that's just a waste of money. If you can only buy 10 shares and you're not allowed to buy stocks that are less than $3, then that money is sitting there useless. I can't do anything with it. Show them how to move things around. That vlogging piece, nice and simple, you see all those videos about 2 minutes, was extremely helpful. And then I would also require them to make a notebook. A lot of what the students do, they have to do without being able to see it update. Everything updates at night. So if you're selling something, you need to keep track of how much money you just made by selling that. Because if you're selling and buying within that day, having a notebook where you are writing down every transaction will be a requirement for me next year from day 1. I didn't figure that out until like 2 weeks left. I was like, y'all got to keep a notebook because I'm stressed about how much Tesla's going for and how much I'm selling it for. So that is something I learned as we were going. One other thing, make sure that you do is look, repeat yourself. You're going to need to repeat yourself. This is just how it works. Can I tell you how many videos I did, how many times I told kids how to get to the account holdings page and scroll to the bottom? Account holdings page, to see the pie chart, scroll to the bottom, it'll show you what you have. Just put it everywhere. I've really learned, my wife's in HR and she's like, this is just how people are. They don't pay attention to every single detail when you send them something. So just get used to the fact that you're going to have to repeat yourself. But ultimately, I think a larger thing for us, and this is something that I try to do in the classroom, when I teach 7 subjects a day and it can kind of get worn down, I try to make sure I think, what's one thing that I'm excited about today? My wife will kind of ask me, what's the thing you're excited about today? What's the thing that kids are going to go home and talk about? I can't do every lesson huge. I can't do every video insane. But what's one thing this week that I'm excited to show kids? What's one thing that I feel like is special about this week? And during this time, I actually had a student intern. So I was able to use her to create a lot of characters. So we did a lot of character work here. And this is the video that we made introducing the rules to the game. So she's playing a very pompous Mary Poppins character.
First, at the beginning of the game, each student will receive $100,000 to buy stocks.
So we go through that, and then halfway through, we kind of broke the rules out. She introduces each one separately, and then an evil villainous teacher jumps in.
Hello, 5th grade. Ms. Altvetter seems to be making this too easy for you.
Those are my wife's glasses. I was going blind
so
doing
let
that.
me make this a little bit more challenging, shall we?
So then I go through and introduce different rules. I introduce rules that we kind of looked at as more challenging. Like there's a limit to how many you can buy. You have to do $20,000 for one company. You have to do 5. You can't do less than 10. So we kind of chunked it out in that manner. We were really, we had a good time creating these characters. we created a news show, kind of like Larry King, where I had her filming. I feel bad for this woman. She was my intern. I was like, I need you to film yourself as two different people, explaining diversification and concentration. And then I'm going to be old cranky Larry King and narrate you. So this took forever. I will tell you, this one took forever. But we were so excited, and they were a lot of fun. I'm not telling you to do things like that. Although if you want to, they're certainly have fun. It's looking for something that you can do that you're excited to share, or the kids are excited to see, an experience. You know, we learn through experiences. We have experiences provide anchor points to our learning, and just sitting at home every day, kids don't have those experiences. So this was a way that we were looking to get them those experiences. All right, so I got about 5 minutes left here, and I want to talk about kind of this more with less idea. More with less being trying to break things down to avoid your breakdown. That week that we made that Larry King video was my breakdown week. Like, I'd spent probably 25 hours editing that video, taking the formats that she had and trying to line things up. And that was the week that we only had a third of the students actually doing things. And it was very telling for me that, you know, I'm going to have to change the way that I teach. I cannot throw in all these extra bits of assessment, say an answer garden at the end of each thing, a check at the end. You need to break it down. You need to cut it back. So there's 4 kind of, I think, specific tips for the stock market game in terms of how do we break it down. One would be, don't rush to buying. I know that the inclination is to say, all right, I'm going to give it to you. You log on, let's figure this thing out. But this really is an activity that you can do lazy. Students can do it lazy. I had a couple kids do it. They finished the last 2 positions, bought their stocks, and they were done. You could do this as a minimum. I took 4 weeks to get to a point where kids were purchasing. And just because the window opens for you to start the game and start purchasing doesn't mean you have to start right away. Like, my kids only had a month to actually purchase, but I had, 2 kids finish in the top 10 area. So there still is plenty of time to do it. Don't rush to getting there, because you've got to really break things down. Like, I did 2 weeks of just vocabulary, like stock fees, broker fees, interest, what's the difference between a product, a company, a brand. I started setting the kids up in terms of being able to figure out what's a public one, what's a private one. Had them kind of comparing ByteDance versus Zoom, and how no one knew what ByteDance was. But then once they found out it's actually part of, it actually manages TikTok, then they all wanted to buy that. But then that one was private. We did 4 weeks of slow your roll, and let's learn what we need to do so that when it comes purchase time, you know what you're looking at. You've compared enough of the charts. You not just getting every kid buying Nike and Under Armour because that's what they wear, or Doritos because that's what they eat right now. So one of the other things is to do small videos. And I mentioned earlier, I took a lot of Carolyn's videos and I would redo them shorter. She's got videos out there on how to make your first purchase, but they needed to see me do it, and they needed me to do it shorter and more condensed, specifically what I needed them to do. Having lots of short videos is a huge benefit here. I have 4 kids. A 3-minute video is how they will learn right now, especially at home with nobody around or minimal parent guidance. They need to be short chunks. And once you go through my Padlets, you'll see there's tons of 2 to 3 minute videos on pretty much everything that they needed to do. Another thing I think make sure you do is you can overly simplify the rules. The rules are massive, and there's a lot of rules that the game just kind of manages on its own. So we went through, and you've already seen the rule video that my intern and I created. We went through and we really broke the rules down into what we felt like were 7 rules that they needed to know, and then 3 kind of evil rules that I kind of jumped in. And I even adjusted the rules to say, it actually says 20% of your portfolio can't be more than 1. Well, it's $10,000. I've got 5th graders. I had a hard time teaching percentages to them over distance. So I adjusted the rule to say, you cannot spend more than $20,000 like that. And we kept that rule going through. So we really kind of broke things down and then broke them into what was helpful and what I considered an evil rule that makes purchasing harder for you. And then I would also suggest that you keep the tips coming. that slowly throughout the entire time, we were rolling out a different strategy that we required students to do. During the last week is when my kids got mutual funds. You know, during this is our last week's Padlet. And you can see during that week, I wanted them, since it was closing on a Friday and they get this on Tuesday, they only had 3 days. So I wanted them to spend 15 minutes every single day managing their portfolio and finishing strong. So we created something separate on each day. I'm talking about journals here. We're talking about overnight pricing here, talking about buying something red here and selling something green. And getting mutual funds, like that's the last week. And for mutual funds, we did the same thing. We really broke it down. This is, I bet my intern loves that I'm sharing all of
Hello, all
these
you
things.
savvy investors, and welcome to the Stock Market Kitchen. Today's special mutual funds, the trail mix of investment. What's a mutual fund? This is a mutual fund. Well, it's not exactly a bowl of trail mix, but a mutual fund is very much like a bowl of trail mix. A mutual fund is its own stock portfolio.
So we picked out 2 mutual funds, 2 large ones, and had them just choose between them. We really pulled it back. We talk about breaking it down. We didn't just say, okay, now you know what they are, go buy one. And take that off there from her. We gave them a choice of 2. And we said, you're buying one of these 2, you figure out how much you want to buy. We required on a certain week that they buy an energy stock. We required that they sell something that was green, required that they buy something that was red. So the strategies kind of kept rolling out, and they were part of a requirement as we were going. So my timer, my Darth Vader just went off. I don't know if you guys heard that. But that was my timer that went off. It was the fastest I feel like I've ever talked, and I don't know if you got an idea of what's going on, but I want to throw this to Carolyn at this point and let her share some of the resources that they had. I will tell you, I spent about 2 weeks before doing this going over a lot of the resources that Carolyn's going to show you now. And it was interesting, once she and I started planning, I was like, oh, I know that page. Oh, that page saved me. That was so nice that was you. So the resources she shows you are very beneficial, and they gave me a lot of great ideas on how to roll this out for a group of 5th graders who had no idea what we were doing. So Carolyn, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm gonna mute myself.
I'll start with mine. Great. So thank you so much, Thomas. That was is really eye-opening for me as someone in the SIFMA Foundation to hear what teachers are doing now and with distance learning, get that direct feedback. And I love the resources that you shared. So I'm going to share now some resources that the SIFMA Foundation provides for stock market game teachers. So I'm going to go over 3 big categories here. The Teacher Support Center, it's our warehouse of all of our curriculum and resources. We also set up a Google Classroom that's pretty new, and we would call that like our storefront of distance learning resources for our educators. And then finally, our YouTube and our Facebook. Our Facebook, we have a Stock Market Game teachers group that is also new. It's a great way to connect with teachers around the nation that are doing the stock market game right now with distance learning. So starting with the Teacher Support Center, when you register for the stock market game as a teacher, you receive an advisor ID and password. And you would log on to our Teacher Support Center, like I said, our warehouse of all of our curriculum and resources by using your advisor ID and password and logging on at www.stockmarketgame.org, just like how your students would log into their trading portfolios. And the Teacher Support Center, like I said, is pretty vast. So I'm just going to go over 3 sections of it right now: the Start Here section, the curriculum, and additional resources. So I'm going to bring those up on my screen now. So this is our main site. Like I said, you're going to log in with your advisor ID and password. And just a quick tip, you'll know it's your advisor ID because it'll have a T in it for teacher. So logging in. And I'm going to go over the first tile out of the 8 tiles, the Start Here section. This kind of breaks down the key components of the Teacher Support Center because we know it is so vast. So you can go scroll through it. It'll have information about team IDs and passwords, program rules, some of our core units, as we call them, for the stock market game, rankings, and it'll also go over our complementary programs, Invest Right, which is our national essay competition, and Invest It Forward, which connects local financial professionals to you and your students in your classroom. But the two section or subsections I like to go over quickly that has a lot of information that you can use right now in the summer if you're doing a summer game or if you just want to prep for the fall. We have tools for teachers. The SIFMA Foundation hosts free webinars all throughout the school year and the summer that you can join. So we have our webinar schedule here that you can look up. We also create calendars. So it's kind of combines our webinar schedule with resources that you can use throughout different months. So right here we have our summer calendar, including our webinar dates, and then helpful tips and resources on the side. So you can definitely download that. And we also have here curriculum maps. So these are more in-depth. They pace out our lessons and other resources, such as newsletters, fact sheets that we have in the Teacher Support Center. We have a 10-week one and a 32-week one. Even if you're not going at that pace or that doesn't fit the amount of weeks that you have your students or are using the stock market game, you might want to just check it out and see how we paced it out. And like Thomas does, kind of take our resources and chunk them out and use them how you will. And tools for students, Thomas mentioned it, but we have created 3 training videos for students and teachers if you would like to, just see how we're going through the portfolio or entering a trade. It can be used for either, I know that Thomas chunked them out as well, but they're about 10 minutes long. Our first one is the portfolio video overview video, how to enter a trade, and how to do research. So these are direct links to our YouTube channel with my own narration. And the YouTube, I'm going to show you a little later about the different playlists that we provide for you and your students. And finally, student handouts. This is a great page that just has a couple of handouts for your students. How to enter a trade. We have a couple that are fun infographics that you may want to share with your students. And you can really dive more into here, but that's another resource we provide. So if you go on the top, resources, back to the Teacher Support Center, I'm just going to go over quickly 2 more tiles. Curriculum. We have a lot of curriculum here. So there's a couple ways that you can sort. You can sort by grade level over here, check them off. 8th grade, 10th grade, whatever you are. You can do by subject. So our curriculum is tagged by subject. Or you could do by unit. If you're just starting the stock market game, you want to start with Unit 1, Understanding SMG. Another way that you can search our curriculum is, for example, I saw that we posted about that we have a lesson about Super Bowl ads and how that affects valuations of companies and stock performance. I can just type in Super Bowl and search, and it's going to come right up. So if you're looking for a specific keyword, you can definitely search our curriculum that way. And then finally, in the Teacher Support Center, additional resources has some pretty great resources for you to use. We have the teacher guide, an after school guide, and a homeschool guide. So you can download any of those. We also have projects. We have a pretty great one, the Lorax project. If I can find it, it's not listed there yet. But our Lorax project talks about sustainable investing. And my favorite part about additional resources is in the news. It's a newsletter that our curriculum director publishes a couple of times a semester, so in the fall and in the spring. So if you check off in the news and you hit title once, it's going to sort it by the latest issue first. So these issues are timely. They talk about current events, and they also give students some questions to think about at the end. So you can see this one is about risk because we're entering a bear market, and it was published April 21st. So those are the big areas that I wanted to go over in the Teacher Support Center. Next, I wanted to go over our Google Classroom. Around March, when coronavirus hit and teachers started to do distance learning, we decided it would be a good idea to add Google Classroom or add a stock market game Google Classroom so that teachers that are using Google Classroom can easily transfer our new and updated distance learning resources straight to their own Google Classroom. Something to note that is if you join the Google Classroom, and you can see you can join by the class code on the screen, and I'll share that resource with you after the webinar as well. You're going to need a Gmail to do so. So sometimes even if your school email is hosted on Gmail, it might not pick it up. So just make sure that you can always create a personal Gmail to access the Google Classroom. It takes like a couple minutes to set up. So here we have it, our Google Classroom. If you're new to Google Classroom, all you need to do is click classwork, and it has all of our resources here. Some resources that I want to point out that are here is we created a student activity packet that you can share with your students that are doing the stock market game over the summer or with their parents at home. It takes, and you can see the index here, it kind of takes some of our core lessons and truncates them. And it also has information about our webinars over the summer that students and parents can join as well. Our webinar hosts are kind of seeing who's going to join and tailoring the webinar to the audience. And we also have information about InvestRight Encore. It's our summer enrichment program for InvestRight. It's non-competitive, but if you and your students are interested in participating, the perk about it is that during InvestRight, normally essays are judged, and we keep all the judging that is done by financial professionals in-house, their comments. If for InvestRight Encore, we're going to be providing a financial professional feedback on students' essays directly to educators and students. So it's a great way if you're just getting started with InvestRight to see what it's all about, or if you're a veteran and you really wanted that feedback, you can get that with InvestRight Encore this summer. And if you join our Google Classroom, we put all of our webinars up here as well. So you can get email notifications about webinars that are coming up, just to make sure that you don't miss any. Videos, and you can look through it, but it is all there. Our YouTube, so we've been building out our YouTube because we know that video is king. And something exciting that is coming up is I'm going to show you, we have longer YouTube videos, our training videos that I mentioned before, and also our student webinars. So in the spring, we have transitioned from just doing teacher webinars to actually direct student webinars. So they're a little on the longer side, but they're all recorded and they're on our YouTube page. So you can even check them out as a teaching resource or share them with your students. But the thing that's exciting that's coming soon is from the feedback that we've gotten from educators like Thomas, we realized that, our videos are too long. So we are chunking out this summer our core lessons into mini videos that you can share directly with your students or use them in your classroom or your online classroom now. So that's something we're really excited about. And if you have feedback on that as well, I'm going to share my contact information at the end of this. So please share that with me. But quickly, I know that I'm want to leave enough time for questions. This is our YouTube channel. It's called The Stock Market Game. Let me just double check. The Stock Market Game Program on YouTube. I would navigate to playlists. And that's where you're going to see our full playlist of student webinars. We have how to invest in a bear market, investing in dividend stocks, and it's broken up to more elementary to middle and then middle to high school levels. We have our stock market game training video playlist that I discussed before. The videos are like around 10 minutes. And something else that's cool that's on our YouTube channel is that we also do curated playlists by our partners. So one playlist that I really love, if I can find it, right? I think I passed it. Here it is. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis made several videos for the stock market game. And you can see on the left, this is the playlist here. I really like life goals. It kind of sets up the stock market game and gives it context. Why is it important to start saving young and investing? And what are your life goals? So we have some great playlists like that on our YouTube channel that you can check out. And then finally, as I wrap up here, we also started a new Stock Market Game Teachers Facebook group. So I'll bring it up on my screen. This is a great way for you to connect with stock market game educators around the country. You can ask questions and share resources of what you're doing in your classroom. So I highly recommend that you search it and you join in the conversation. So that's my brief, or not so brief, overview of the resources that the SIFMA Foundation provides. Here's my contact information if you want to jot it down. But otherwise, I think that I'm ready to take some questions if you are, Thomas.
Absolutely.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? This is Alan Cox at the Maryland Council on Economic Education. Can you
Hi,
hear
Alan.
me?
I
We
can
can
hear
hear
you.
Oh, great. All right, my question is, okay, if I'm a first-time teacher, kind of like Thomas, and I'm doing this for the very first time, how do I sell this to my principal?
Thomas, I don't know if you want to take a go as a, a stock market game teacher that just did this.
I would say during the COVID time, my grade level, each teacher was assigned a different subject area, and I was assigned social studies. And I would say social studies was the only thing that students were learning completely new content. You know, as we're carrying over writing, we're carrying over reading, we're carrying over math. These were, my students were doing legit new learning, actually going through new instruction and seeing how the things that they had done in math were applying over and seeing a larger world. I think one of the best things about school, about public school, is that you're exposing kids to a world that they would not see on their own. Like, this is, I think, one of the benefits of having public school is I get to show you something that you never thought that you would spend time looking at. And it's going to open your world up to something brand new. And I think stock market game does that incredibly well. Kids have no exposure to it or minimal exposure to it, or even just a passing understanding of certain things. We're really opening kids up to the world. That's how I would sell it to my principal. I would also tell him he looked really nice, his suit looked great. Those they help.
I would add that I'm always amazed at the teachers in all different subject areas that incorporate the stock market game into their classroom. It's very cross-curricular. We have ELA teachers, social studies teachers like Thomas, math teachers, statistic teachers. It's just amazing how the game can be applied to so many different subjects. And like I said, it's very cross-curricular. So I think that's a great point to bring up to your principal.
I'd also add in, since it's very live, it's very active. If this were in the classroom, there's a culture that's going to come with that, always something always new going on. And it being distance learning based, with as fast as the market changes, kids are always needing to work and always need to be on point. They can't get all their work done on Monday and then just be done with school for a while like some of them tried to do. That this requires students to be actively engaged with each other and with the world. And those are things that we do at school.
All right, we had another question. I guess this is for Thomas.
Yeah.
Thomas, what's the difference between Padlet and Nearpod in terms of how you used it?
So Nearpod, can I share my screen? I pulled a Nearpod up when I saw that question. So I'm gonna share my screen really quick and pull up a Nearpod here. So this is a Nearpod on the teacher side of it before I send it live. And Nearpod is outstanding in that you can build quizzes into it. You have these great matching activities where you put a picture with some vocabulary and kids are kind of pulling those things together. Nearpod is a great assessment piece, but Nearpod is individual. So the work gets saved individually, whereas with a Padlet, I'm seeing things in a public forum. So that's a major difference between the two. One of the things I like about Nearpod is I get individual feedback on each kid's work that is there. Nearpod can handle most media, but in terms of live updates, this is the main reason that I use Padlet as my main platform. If there was a link that didn't work, if there was a change I wanted to make or something I wanted to add in, I can go into Padlet and change it right at that moment without sending kids a new link. If I wanted to change something in Nearpod, I would have to deactivate that session and send them out a new code, making it much more complicated to make adjustments. And let's be honest, like no matter how organized or planned you were, you're making mistakes in terms of what you were sending. I would also say Padlet's completely free. Nearpod has levels of access that you have to pay for. And I think in terms of what we want kids to do, Padlet is visually much easier to handle because you can see the beginning to the end is what's expected of you. With Nearpod, you see the question that's there, you see the activity that's there, and you click next, and you click next, and you click next. It's just something that is mentally easier to handle about Padlet visually for kids there, and organizationally that I can get them moving. I've also found Padlet you can kind of stop at any point. Sometimes if you stop Nearpod in the middle of it, it saves your stuff, and sometimes it doesn't quite. So kids are able to kind of work at their own asynchronous pace using a Padlet. Does that answer your question?
I think so, thank you. And Carolyn, real quick as we wrap up the Q&A here, could you just remind all of the participants of how they can play the summer stock market game right now if they wanted to?
Yeah, so you would just go on www.stockmarketgame.org and register. If you're an educator, you can definitely register as an educator with your students. If you think you have parents that would be interested, they can also register in the parent-child region. So both are encouraged to participate during the summer. I believe that Maryland has some sessions running.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so you can definitely sign up.
All right, great. Well, thank you both. Tremendous job. Thank you guys very, very much. I think the participants got a lot out of this. We are recording this. It's going to be available. Are both of you available for questions later on if we get some?
Definitely.
All right, great. All right, and let's remind all the participants that we have a next session starting at 10 o'clock. And we're going to take a look at all the Federal Reserve materials for educators. So thanks again, gang, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much. Terrific job.